The Galactic Council Station floated in the darkness of neutral space like a city made of light and metal. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went through its docking bays. Species that had never seen each other's stars walked the same corridors and breathed the same recycled air. It was supposed to be a place of peace, a place where old enemies could become new friends. But peace was a fragile thing. And Princess Valeth knew that better than anyone. She walked through the main corridor of the diplomatic quarter with her head held high. Her scales shimmered under the artificial lights, dark purple and harder than most metals found in the galaxy. Her eyes, golden and sharp, scanned every face that turned to look at her. And every face turned. They always did. A group of Russian diplomats pressed themselves against the wall as she passed. Their thin bodies trembled, and their large black eyes followed her with obvious fear. Valeth did not slow down. She was used to this. A Pelori merchant dropped his cargo container and scrambled to get out of her path. Two Orvan scientists whispered to each other and pointed at her like she was some kind of dangerous animal in a display case. Deathworlder. That was what they called her. That was what they called all of her kind. The Karn had evolved on a world that would kill most species in minutes. High gravity that crushed bones. Toxic atmosphere that burned lungs. Predators with claws that could tear through starship hulls. Valeth's people had survived all of it. They had grown strong, their bodies adapting over millions of years until nothing in the galaxy could hurt them. Nothing except loneliness. Valeth reached the entrance to the main council chamber and stopped. Through the transparent doors, she could see dozens of delegates taking their seats. They chatted with each other, laughed at jokes, and shared drinks from their homeworlds. When the Koran delegation entered, all of that would stop. The laughter would die. The conversations would become whispers. Everyone would watch her like she might attack at any moment. She was the heir to the Koran throne, one of the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. And she had never felt more alone. A soft voice spoke from behind her. "Your Highness, the session will begin in 10 minutes. Would you like me to arrange for refreshments?" Valeth turned and looked down at the speaker. He was human, small, and fragile-looking compared to her massive frame. His hair was dark brown, cut short in a simple style. His eyes were a calm gray, and his face showed no fear at all. That was unusual. Most species could not even meet her gaze. "You are the new aide," Valeth said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Highness." "Nathan Cole. The Council assigned me as your cultural liaison for the duration of the summit." Valeth studied him for a moment. Humans were a relatively new species to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel a few decades ago. Most of the older species considered them primitive and unimportant. Valeth had never paid much attention to them herself. They seemed soft, breakable, like all the other weak species that filled the galaxy. "I do not need refreshments," she said, turning back toward the chamber doors. "And I do not need a liaison. You may go." Nathan did not go. He simply fell into step a few paces behind her, his footsteps quiet on the metal floor. Valeth felt a flicker of annoyance, but said nothing. If the human wanted to follow her around, that was his choice. He would learn soon enough that being near a Koran was not something most beings enjoyed. The council session was exactly what Valeth had expected. Hours of talking that led nowhere. The Vision Collective complained about Koran expansion near their borders. The Orvan Federation demanded new trade agreements. The Pelori Union asked for military protection against pirates. Everyone had problems, and everyone wanted someone else to solve them. Valeth sat in silence through most of it. When she did speak, the chamber fell silent immediately. Delegates leaned away from their screens. Translators stuttered over her words. She could feel the fear in the room like a physical weight pressing against her. Scales. She hated it. When the session finally ended, Valeth was the first to leave. She walked quickly through the corridors, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. Nathan kept pace behind her, never falling too far back, never getting too close. She had almost forgotten he was there. She stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "Why are you still following me?" Nathan met her eyes without flinching. "It is my job, Your Highness. Your job is to explain cultural differences. There are no cultural events scheduled for this evening." "That is true," Nathan agreed. "But I thought you might want company." Valeth stared at him. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever wanted to be in her company. Not really. Even other Korean kept their distance from the royal family. Power was respected, but it was not loved. "I do not need company," she said finally. Nathan nodded. "Of course, Your Highness. I will be in my quarters if you change your mind. Good evening." He turned and walked away, his steps calm and unhurried. Valeth watched him go, feeling something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Curiosity. She shook her head and continued toward her own quarters. The human was strange, but that did not matter. He was just another fragile creature in a galaxy full of fragile creatures. He would keep his distance eventually, just like everyone else. Her quarters were large and empty. The council had given her the finest rooms available, with thick walls designed to withstand her strength and air filters calibrated for her species. It was comfortable. It was also silent. Valeth stood by the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her homeworld spun through the void. Her father sat on the throne, growing older with each passing year. Soon, she would return to take his place. She would become queen of the most feared species in the galaxy, and she would still be alone. She did not notice the small camera hidden in the corner of the ceiling. She did not see the tiny red light blinking in the darkness. She did not know that somewhere on the station, figures in dark clothing were watching her every move, planning something that would change everything. But Nathan Cole knew in his own small quarters. The human sat in the darkness with his eyes closed, running through everything he had observed that day. The Veshan guards who watched Valeth too closely. The maintenance worker who did not carry any tools. The slight flicker in the station's security grid near the diplomatic quarters. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. Nathan opened his eyes and looked at the wall between his room and the princess's quarters. She thought she was the most dangerous thing on this station. She thought she was alone in her strength. She was wrong on both counts. He had a job to do, and he intended to do it, no matter what it cost him. The next morning came too quickly for Valeth. She had not slept well. Dreams of empty thrones and silent halls had followed her through the night, leaving her tired and restless. When the door chime sounded, she was already awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering why she had agreed to attend this summit at all. "Enter," she called out. The door slid open, and Nathan Cole stepped inside carrying a small tray. Steam rose from a cup placed carefully at its center. The smell that filled the room was strange, but not unpleasant. It was warm and slightly bitter, with something sweet underneath. "Good morning, Your Highness," Nathan said. "I brought you something from my homeworld. It is called tea. I thought you might enjoy it before the negotiations begin." Valeth sat up slowly, her scales catching the light from the window. She looked at the cup with suspicion. "Why would you bring me this?" "Because you looked tired yesterday," Nathan replied simply. "And because kindness costs nothing." He set the tray on the table beside her bed and stepped back, waiting. Valeth picked up the cup carefully. It was small in her hands, designed for creatures with much smaller fingers. She raised it to her lips and took a small sip. The taste surprised her. It was nothing like the nutrient solution she consumed on her homeworld. This was gentler, smoother. It spread warmth through her chest in a way she had not expected. "It is acceptable," she said, which was the closest thing to a compliment she had given anyone in years. Nathan nodded. And for just a moment, Valith thought she saw the corner of his mouth turn upward. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual calm expression. "The negotiations with the Veshan Collective begin in 1 hour," he said. "Shall I escort you to the chamber?" Valith finished the tea and set the cup down. "Very well. But stay silent during the meeting. I do not need interference. Of course, Your Highness." The walk to the negotiation chamber was quieter than the day before. Most of the station's inhabitants had learned to avoid the corridors when the Corran Princess was moving. Valith appreciated the empty halls. She did not appreciate the way Nathan's eyes moved constantly, scanning every doorway and corner they passed. "You are watching everything," she observed. "Old habit," Nathan said without looking at her. "Humans are curious by nature." "Curious about what?" "Empty corridors?" "Curious about things that seem wrong." Before Valith could ask what he meant, they arrived at the chamber doors. Inside, the Vishun delegation was already seated. Their ambassador, a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms, rose to greet her. His name was Telvoran, and his hatred for the Corran was barely hidden behind his polite smile. "Princess Valith," Telvoran said, spreading all 4 arms in a gesture of welcome. "How gracious of you to join us. I trust your quarters are comfortable? We would not want the Council's most dangerous guest to feel neglected." Valith felt her claws twitch. The insult was subtle but clear. She forced herself to remain calm. "My quarters are adequate. Shall we begin?" The negotiations were brutal. The Vishan Collective wanted the Corran to withdraw their ships from 3 border systems. They claimed these systems were historically Vishan territory. Valith knew this was a lie. Those systems had been unclaimed space for centuries before her people arrived, she argued. She presented evidence. She cited ancient star maps and colonial records. Telvoran dismissed everything with a wave of his many hands. "The Corran take what they want," he said finally, his voice dripping with contempt. "That is what Deathworlders do. They destroy. They conquer. They leave nothing but ashes behind." The room fell silent. Every delegate held their breath, waiting to see how the princess would react. Valith could feel the anger building inside her, hot and sharp. Her muscles tensed. Her vision narrowed. Then she felt something unexpected. A presence at her side. Nathan had moved closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could sense his calm. He did not speak. He did not interfere. He simply stood there, steady and quiet, like a rock in a storm. The anger faded. Valith took a slow breath and looked at Telvoran with cold eyes. "The Corran do not need to take what is already ours," she said. "These negotiations are over. We will present our evidence to the full council and let them decide." She turned and walked out of the chamber before Telvoran could respond. Nathan followed close behind. Neither of them spoke until they were well away from the Veshan delegation. "You controlled yourself," Nathan said quietly. "That was impressive." Valith glanced at him. "You moved closer to me. Why?" "I thought you might need a reminder that you were not alone in that room." Valith did not know how to respond to that. No one had ever tried to help her in such a simple way. No one had ever thought she needed help at all. They returned to her quarters in silence. At the door, Valith paused and turned to face her human aide. "Why did you volunteer for this assignment?" she asked. "Humans are new to the galaxy. You could have requested any position. Why choose to serve a Corran?" Nathan considered the question for a moment. "Because I wanted to see the galaxy," he said. "And because everyone deserves someone in their corner, even the people others are afraid of." He bowed slightly and walked away toward his own quarters, leaving Valeth standing alone in her doorway. She watched him go, that strange feeling of curiosity growing stronger in her chest. That night, long after the station had dimmed its lights for the sleep cycle, Nathan slipped out of his quarters. He moved through the corridors like a shadow, avoiding the few security patrols that still wandered the halls. His footsteps made no sound. His breathing was slow and controlled. He had spent the entire negotiation session watching the Vashan guards. Their positions were wrong. Too many of them near the exits. Too few near their own ambassador. They were not protecting Telvoran. They were watching something else. Someone else. Nathan reached the maintenance level beneath the diplomatic quarters. The air here was colder, filled with the hum of machinery and the smell of recycled coolant. He found the access panel he was looking for and pulled it open with practiced ease. Inside, hidden behind a tangle of cables and pipes, he found them. Small devices, no bigger than his thumbnail, attached to the station's internal systems. They were transmitting signals directly to a location he could not trace. Surveillance equipment. Someone was watching Princess Valeth very closely. Nathan removed the devices one by one, crushing them between his fingers and dropping the fragments into the waste system. He would need to check her quarters next, but that would have to wait until she was away. He made his way back to his room as silently as he had left, stopping only once to observe a maintenance worker heading in the opposite direction. The worker carried no tools. His uniform was slightly too large, and his eyes were too alert for someone who was supposed to be tired from a long shift. Nathan memorized his face and kept walking. The pieces were falling into place. Someone wanted the princess dead, and they had no idea that a human was already one step ahead of them. Back in his quarters, Nathan sat in the darkness and began to plan. He would need to move carefully. The enemy was watching, but they did not know they were being watched in return. That was their first mistake. It would also be their last. The grand banquet was the highlight of every diplomatic summit. Species from across the galaxy gathered in the station's largest hall to share food, drink, and conversation. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light over tables covered in dishes from 100 different worlds. Music played from hidden speakers, a gentle blend of melodies designed to please as many ears as possible. Valeth hated every second of it. She sat alone at a table meant for 8. The chairs around her remained empty. Delegates passed by, their eyes sliding over her like she was an obstacle to be avoided rather than a guest to be welcomed. She watched them gather in groups, laughing and talking, forming connections that she would never be part of. Her food sat untouched before her. The station's chefs had tried their best to prepare something suitable for Corran biology, but the result was a pale imitation of what she would eat at home. It did not matter. She had no appetite anyway. A movement caught her attention. Nathan Cole walked through the crowd, carrying a plate loaded with strange foods she did not recognize. He did not hesitate when he reached her table. He simply pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Your Highness," he said with a small nod. Valeth stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Eating dinner." He picked up something wrapped in thin bread and took a bite. "The station serves food from many worlds. I wanted to try a little of everything. You are sitting at my table." "Yes, no one sits at my table." Nathan swallowed his food and met her eyes. "I am sitting at your table right now, so that is no longer true." Valeth did not know whether to be angry or amused. She settled for confusion, which seemed safest. "You are very strange, human. I have been told that before." Around them, the other delegates had noticed what was happening. Whispers spread through the hall like ripples on water. A human sitting with the Deathworlder princess. Had he lost his mind? Did he not know how dangerous she was? Nathan ignored all of them. He continued eating, occasionally pointing out different dishes and explaining what they were. This one was a vegetable from the Oravan homeworld. That one was a dessert made by the Pelori. The green thing that looked like jelly was apparently considered a delicacy among the Veshan, though Nathan admitted it tasted like grass mixed with sugar. Despite herself, Vayleith found her mood improving. The human's easy manner was different from anything she had experienced. He was not afraid of her. He did not treat her like a monster or a weapon. He treated her like a person. It was a strange feeling. A good feeling. A delegate approached their table. He was Orvan, with the wide eyes and spotted skin common to his species. Unlike most of the others at the banquet, he did not seem afraid. Curious, perhaps, but not afraid. "Princess Vayleith," he said, bowing slightly. "Forgive my interruption. My name is Counselor Drevin. I study planetary classifications and evolutionary biology. May I ask you a question?" Vayleith glanced at Nathan, who gave a small shrug. She turned back to the Oravan. "You may ask." Drevin pulled up a chair and sat down, his excitement visible in the way his spots changed color. "I've always been fascinated by Deathworld species. Your homeworld, Korra, is classified as a Category 3 Deathworld. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme predators. Is it true that your scales can withstand temperatures that would melt most metals?" "Yes," Vayleith said. "Our bodies adapted to survive volcanic regions where other creatures could not." "Remarkable." Drevin leaned forward. "Tell me, in all your studies, have you ever encountered another Deathworld species? One that rivals your own capabilities?" Vayleith considered the question. "There are a few minor Deathworlds scattered across the galaxy. Their inhabitants are stronger than average, but nothing compared to the Korran. We are unique in our level of adaptation." "Interesting." Drevin's eyes flickered briefly toward Nathan, then back to Vayleith. "And what about humans? I understand their planet is also quite hostile." Nathan set down his food, his expression unchanged. But Vayleith noticed something in his eyes, a flicker of alertness that had not been there a moment ago. "Earth is classified as a Category 1 world," Vayleith said. "Barely above standard habitability. Humans are fragile creatures. No offense intended." Nathan smiled slightly. "None taken, Your Highness." Drevin nodded slowly, his spots shifting again. Of course. The classifications are quite clear. Though I have heard some interesting rumors about human endurance. Apparently, they can function for days without sleep and continue moving even with injuries that would incapacitate other species. "Rumors are often exaggerated," Nathan said calmly. "Humans are nothing special, just persistent, I suppose." The Oravan studied him for a long moment, then rose from his chair. "Thank you both for your time. It was most enlightening." He bowed again and disappeared into the crowd. Vayleith watched him go. "That was strange." "He was curious," Nathan said, returning to his meal. "Scientists often are." But Vayleith noticed that Nathan did not eat with the same casual ease as before. His movements were slightly stiffer, his attention split between his food and the rest of the room. She filed this observation away for a later consideration. The banquet continued for several more hours. Vayleith found herself talking with Nathan about inconsequential things. The differences between Korran and human music. The strange beauty of certain nebulae visible from the station's observation deck. The difficulty of translating jokes between languages. By the time the hall began to empty, Vayleith realized she had not thought about her loneliness once during the entire evening. Nathan escorted her back to her quarters, maintaining his usual position a few steps behind. At her door, he paused. "Thank you for allowing me to join you at dinner," he said. "I hope I was not too intrusive." Vayleith turned to face him. "You were intrusive, but it was not unpleasant." She paused, searching for the right words. "I think." I understand now why you volunteered for this assignment. You are not afraid of things that frighten others. Nathan tilted his head slightly. Fear is a response to the unknown. I find that most things become less frightening once you understand them. And you think you understand me? I think I am beginning to. He offered her a small bow. Good night, Your Highness. Sleep well. He walked away, and Valith entered her quarters, feeling something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. She did not see. Nathan paused at the end of the corridor and looked back toward her door. She did not see the concern in his eyes or the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. The Arvan scientist's questions had not been random. Someone was digging into human capabilities, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The surveillance devices Nathan had destroyed would have already been reported missing. The enemy knew someone was interfering with their plans. They would move soon. They had no choice. Nathan walked to the lower maintenance level, his footsteps silent on the metal floor. He found the weapons cache he had discovered earlier and studied it carefully. Pulse rifles, neural disruptors, armor-piercing rounds designed to penetrate even the toughest hides. They were planning to kill a Deathworlder. They had come prepared. But they had not prepared for him. Nathan memorized every detail, then slipped away before anyone could notice his presence. Tomorrow would bring danger. He could feel it coming like a storm on the horizon. When it arrived, he would be ready. The attack came in the darkest hour of the night cycle. Valith was dreaming of her homeworld when the first explosion shook her quarters. She woke instantly, her warrior instincts taking over before her mind fully understood what was happening. The lights had gone out. Emergency systems cast everything in dim red shadows, and her door was being forced open. She rolled off her bed just as the door burst inward. 3 figures rushed into the room, moving with trained precision. They wore dark armor that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Their faces were hidden behind sealed helmets. Each one carried a weapon Valith had never seen before, long and sleek with a pulsing blue core. Vashan assassins. She recognized their body shape even through the armor. Valith charged at the nearest one, her claws extended and ready to tear through metal and flesh alike. But the assassin was faster than she expected. He raised his weapon and fired. The beam hit her chest with a force that stopped her mid-stride. It was not heat or impact that brought her down. It was something worse. The weapon sent waves of energy directly into her nervous system, scrambling the signals between her brain and her muscles. She stumbled, her limbs refusing to obey her commands. Neural disruptors. Weapons designed specifically to bypass Karin. Defenses. Someone had studied her species very carefully. The second assassin fired, and another wave of agony crashed through her body. Valith fell to her knees, fighting with everything she had to stay conscious. Her vision blurred. Her hearts pounded against her ribs like caged animals trying to escape. The Deathworlder is down, one of the assassins said, his voice distorted by his helmet. Finish her quickly. We need to be gone before security responds. The third assassin stepped forward, raising his weapon for the killing shot. Valith looked up at him, refusing to close her eyes. If she was going to die, she would face death with the dignity of a Koran princess. The shot never came. Something struck the assassin from behind with such force that he flew across the room and slammed into the wall. His armor cracked. His weapon clattered to the floor. He did not get up. Nathan Cole stood in the doorway. He had no armor, no weapons that Valith could see. He wore simple sleeping clothes, and his feet were bare on the cold metal floor. But his eyes had changed. The calm gray she had grown accustomed to was gone, replaced by something cold and sharp and utterly without mercy. Get away from her, he said quietly. The 2 remaining assassins turned to face him. One of them laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the damaged room. A human? This is what comes to save the Deathworlder princess. He raised his weapon and pointed it at Nathan's chest. Stand down, little creature. This does not concern you. Walk away, and you might live to see tomorrow. Nathan did not walk away. He moved. Valeth had seen fast warriors before. The Koran trained their soldiers from birth, pushing their bodies to the absolute limits of speed and power. She had watched combat demonstrations that left even experienced fighters gasping in disbelief. Nothing had prepared her for what she saw now. Nathan crossed the distance between himself and the first assassin in less than a heartbeat. His hand closed around the barrel of the weapon and twisted. Metal screamed as the weapon bent at an impossible angle. The assassin tried to pull back, but Nathan was already inside his guard. The human's other hand shot forward, fingers finding the gap between the helmet and the chest plate. He grabbed and pulled. The assassin's helmet came off with a spray of sparks from broken seals. Before the vision could react, Nathan drove his elbow into the exposed throat with devastating precision. The assassin dropped, gasping and choking, no longer a threat. The second assassin opened fire. Blue energy beams cut through the air where Nathan had been standing a moment before. But Nathan was not there anymore. He had rolled to the side, coming up beneath the weapon's line of fire. His foot swept the assassin's legs out from under him. The Veshan hit the ground hard. Nathan was on top of him before he could recover. One hand pinned the weapon arm to the floor. The other gripped the assassin's wrist and twisted sharply. Even through the helmet, Valeth could hear the crack of breaking bone. The assassin screamed. Nathan silenced him with a precise strike to the temple. The Vishan went limp. The entire fight had lasted less than 10 seconds. Nathan rose slowly, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. He was bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, where one of the beams had caught him. He did not seem to notice. He walked to the surviving assassin, the one whose throat he had struck, and knelt beside him. The Veshan was still conscious, his pale blue eyes wide with shock and pain. "Who sent you?" Nathan asked. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but there was something beneath it that made Veleth's scales prickle with unease. The assassin shook his head weakly. "You are just a human. You are not supposed to be able to do this. Humans are weak. Humans are prey." Nathan leaned closer. "Let me tell you something about humans. Our planet is not a Category 1 death world. Someone made a mistake in the classification. Earth has earthquakes that flatten cities, hurricanes that level entire coastlines. We have predators that hunt us from the sky, from the water, from the shadows. We have diseases that can kill millions. And we survived all of it." He grabbed the assassin's collar and lifted him slightly off the floor. "We are not prey. We have never been prey. We are the most successful persistence predators our world ever produced. We hunted animals to extinction before we even discovered fire. We walked out of Africa and spread across every continent on our planet. We adapt. We endure. We overcome." The assassin's eyes had gone very wide. "What are you?" "I am a human," Nathan said. "And I am exactly where I need to be." He let the assassin drop and stood up. Security forces would arrive soon. The explosions and weapons fire had certainly triggered alarms across the station. Nathan turned to face Valeth. The cold hardness in his eyes softened slightly as he looked at her. "Your Highness, are you injured?" Valeth pushed herself to her feet, her strength slowly returning as the effects of the neural disruptors faded. She looked at the 3 defeated assassins, then at the small human standing among them like a warrior returning from battle. "You," she said slowly, "you are not what you seem." "No," Nathan admitted. "I am not. How is this possible? Humans are supposed to be fragile. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. How can you fight like that?" Nathan glanced down at his hands, then back at her. Everything you just described is true. We have no claws, no scales, no poison. What we have instead is something different. Our bodies are built for endurance and adaptation. We can regulate our temperature, recover from injuries that would kill other species, and push ourselves beyond normal limits when we need to. Our ancestors ran prey to death across open plains. We did not need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just needed to never give up. Valeth stared at him. Earth is a death world. Earth is absolutely a death world, Nathan confirmed. And humans are what survived it. The sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridor. Station security was finally arriving, too late to make any difference. Nathan looked at Valeth with something almost like apology in his eyes. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. My orders were to protect you without revealing what I really am. But I suppose that secret is out now. Valeth walked toward him slowly. She was taller than him by nearly 2 feet. She was stronger than him in pure physical terms. Her body had evolved to survive conditions that would crush most beings in seconds. And yet, looking into his calm gray eyes, she felt something she had never felt before when facing another creature. Respect for an equal. You are my guardian, she said. Yes, you have been watching over me since the VZS beginning. Yes. Valeth nodded slowly. Then I have only one question. Why? Nathan's expression softened just a fraction. Because everyone deserves someone watching their back. Even a princess who thinks she has to face the universe alone. Security forces burst into the room, weapons drawn. Nathan stepped back, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. He would have a lot of explaining to do, but as Valeth watched him being escorted away for questioning, she felt something warm spreading through her chest. It was not loneliness. It was not isolation. It was the beginning of something new. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of healing machines. Nathan sat on the edge of an examination table while a medical drone sealed the wound on his shoulder. The beam had burned deeper than he had realized during the fight, but he had dealt with worse. Much worse. Station security had kept him for 3 hours, asking questions he could not fully answer. Who was he really? Who did he work for? How had a simple human diplomatic aide managed to defeat 3 trained Vishan assassins? Nathan had told them enough truth to satisfy their immediate concerns. He was a security specialist placed undercover to protect high-value diplomatic targets. His employers preferred to remain anonymous. The details of his training were classified. They did not like his answers, but they could not argue with the results. Princess Valeth was alive. 3 assassins were in custody, and the plot against the Koran delegation had been exposed. Eventually, they let him go. He was walking back to his quarters when he sensed someone following him. The footsteps were heavy but careful, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for someone of that size. Nathan smiled slightly and stopped in the middle of the corridor. You do not need to follow me, Your Highness. I am not going anywhere. Valeth stepped out of the shadows behind him. She had changed into fresh clothing, her scales clean and gleaming under the corridor lights. The effects of the neural disruptors had completely faded. She looked strong and dangerous and very much alive. I have questions, she said. I expected you would. They walked together in silence until they reached the observation deck. The great windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of the stars that took the breath away. Nebulae painted the darkness in shades of purple and gold. Distant suns burned like scattered diamonds against the void. Valeth stood before the window, her reflection staring back at her from the glass. Nathan stopped beside her, his smaller form almost lost next to her massive presence. Tell me everything, she said. Nathan took a slow breath. Earth is classified as a Category 1 world in official records. But those records are wrong. Deliberately wrong. Valeth turned to look at him. Why would anyone falsify such records? Because humanity is still new to the galactic community. We are small. We have few ships, little territory, and no military reputation to speak of. If the other species knew what we really are, they would see us as a threat. They might try to contain us before we grow strong enough to protect ourselves. He looked out at the stars, his expression distant. So our leaders made a choice. We would hide our true nature. We would seem harmless, primitive, unremarkable. We would spread quietly through the galaxy, taking jobs that nobody else wanted. Diplomatic aides, maintenance workers, cargo handlers. We would watch. We would learn. And when the time was right, we would be ready. Valeth processed this information slowly. You are spies. Some of us. Others are protectors, like me. We are placed near individuals or groups that our analysts believe are important to galactic stability. When threats appear, we deal with them quietly. Nobody needs to know that humans were involved. Until tonight. Nathan nodded. Until tonight. Valeth turned back to the window. Her reflection showed nothing of what she was feeling. Why me? Why was I considered important enough to protect? The Koran are one of the most powerful species in the known galaxy. If your princess were assassinated at a diplomatic summit, the consequences would be catastrophic. Your people would demand revenge. The Veshan would deny involvement. War would follow. Millions would die. He paused. But beyond the politics, there was another reason. Our analysts studied you. They saw someone who was isolated, surrounded by fear, treated as a monster by species who did not understand her. They thought you deserved better than to die alone, far from home, without anyone to stand beside you. Valeth was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Nathan had ever heard it. I have spent my entire life believing I was unique. The only true Deathworlder in a galaxy of fragile creatures. I thought that was what made me strong. But it was also what made me lonely. She looked at Nathan, really looked at him for the first time. Not as a servant or an aide or even a mysterious protector. As a person. Now I learned that I was never alone. That somewhere in this vast universe, there was another species that understood what it meant to survive against impossible odds. That there were beings who looked weak but carried the same fire inside them that burns in me. Nathan met her gaze without flinching. Humans and Koran are not so different. We both come from worlds that tried to kill us every single day. We both refuse to die. That creates a bond that most species will never understand. Valeth nodded slowly. Yes, I believe it does. She was quiet for a moment, then made a decision. I do not want a hidden guardian anymore. I want an open ally. Someone who stands beside me, not behind me. Someone the galaxy can see. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That would mean revealing what I am. What humans are. Perhaps it is time the galaxy knew. He considered this. It would change everything. The careful deception that humanity had built over decades would begin to unravel. Other species would react with fear, with suspicion, perhaps even with aggression. The future would become uncertain and dangerous. But looking at Valeth, standing tall and proud before the endless stars, Nathan felt something shift inside him. He was tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be less than he was. And if there was going to be trouble ahead, he could not think of anyone better to face it with than the princess who had shown him that strength came in many forms. Very well, he said. I accept. Valeth extended her hand, massive and clawed and capable of crushing stone. Nathan placed his own hand in hers, small and soft, and hiding a strength that had surprised an entire galaxy. They shook. Partners, Valeth said. Partners, Nathan agreed. They stood together at the window, Deathworlder and Deathworlder, watching the stars spin slowly past. Behind them, the station hummed with life and activity. Somewhere, the surviving assassins were being interrogated. Somewhere else, messages were being sent that would change the political landscape of a dozen worlds. None of that mattered right now. What mattered was this moment. Two beings who had thought themselves alone in the universe, finally understanding that they had found something rare and precious. A true equal. Valeth spoke without looking away from the stars. What happens now? Nathan smiled slightly. Now we go back to the council and finish what we started. The Veshan plotters will be exposed. Your people will be safe. And the galaxy will learn that humans are not quite what they appear to be. Will they fear you? Probably. Fear is often the first response to the unknown. And after fear? Nathan thought about the question. About his own journey from soldier to spy to guardian. About the choices his species had made and the choices that still lay ahead. After fear comes understanding, he said finally. And after understanding, if we are lucky, comes something better. Respect, cooperation, maybe even friendship. Valeth made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was the first time Nathan had ever heard her make that sound. I think I would like to see that, she said. So would I. They stayed at the window until the Tula decrews. Station's lights began to brighten for the morning cycle. Then, together, they walked toward whatever future awaited them, not as a princess and her servant, not as a Deathworlder and her guardian, but as partners, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again.